Hey everybody, we're going to be talking about Africa. The name of this channel is Uzo. There's only one Uzo, meaning there's only one direction. That direction is up. You saw the title is entitled The Africa Rule. This is the unexpected shift in power, and you definitely won't believe what happened. Africa is now demanding, not asking, not begging. Now, to some extent, maybe some of the political servants that are there, the public servants, because that's what a politician is. They serve the public. They're there and they might still be begging to a certain extent, but for the most part, that's not what's happening. There's a huge shift in the mentality. Maybe that can be attributed to China putting a battery in the back of the African nations, the Caribbean nations. But I can tell you right now, as a black man out of the United States, from my people that were here from the killing fields of the American South, and from those descendants that were already here before the invaders came to the United States and we built this nation, I can tell you that the mentality of us even here have shifted. You got to respect black people. It may be a new concept for many people, but here it is on the continent. Before I get too drifted off course, look, the Africa rule is this: you want the resources, you want access to the political networks, you want this so that you can make a profit in your nation. You want to get all of that? Well, you're going to have to make a better deal. Now, many of that has come off of the back of China invested in Africa, and maybe some of those deals that we don't know about has demanded that they start to step up and step up to those nations that are there. Or it could have just come from, hey, you know what? China's already forgiven debt obligations in 17 or 22 nations? And they didn't, hey, no strings attached or whatever. Maybe they had something that they said, look, you can't say anything negative about us, and you should be standing up for yourself when it comes to the West. Hey, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter, because the people, the actual citizens on the ground, they're getting tired of France. They're getting tired of Britain. They're getting tired of all the other Western nations. Now, they'll say it's the West. We'll say it's white. All right. Now, they're saying, hey, come with us with an actual deal. Don't come to us talking about, hey, beware of China. You weren't doing anything before that. And it's very interesting because they say that China's going to put them in a debt trap. But you know what? This video is going to be a little bit different. The normal ones, I'm talking about, hey, this is how we can build our wealth. This is how we're going to do this. This is how we save. This is how we do that. But this one is a more overall thing about what's Africa looking like. Let's look at this. Population in Africa, 1.4 billion people. Now, I think sometimes it says 1.2 billion. You look at Google. I think that takes out Northern Africa, because these people, particularly Britain, didn't they name the Middle East? Right? These people, they tried to keep curving off and say, hey, basically, Egypt wasn't Africa. North Africa isn't Africa. And many people there, they're not the native Africans. And they say, hey, we're not African like that. Hey, get the black Africans. They're trying to introduce that term, black African. Wait a minute. African is black. So it may be 1.2 to 1.4 billion. I'm going by this one because I believe that includes Northern Africa and even has a breakdown. You got 1.4 billion people. But guess what? Let's look here in the middle of here. It says the median age is 19.7 years old. This is by far the youngest population on the planet. The median age, I think, out of the United States is almost, in most countries worldwide, it's almost 40. Almost 40, and yet you got a median age of 19.7 years. So basically, almost 20 years old is the median age. Of course, you're going to have all of this. And as a person that's there as an investor, let's look at it from that aspect here. As an investor, you're looking at, hey, if we get these people hooked on us, we have a market that we can sell to for the rest of our lives, not their lives, the rest of our lives. Because if you're an investor, you're most likely over the age of 20. What are you, 40 plus? Maybe in your 30s, maybe in your 20s, but you're not a teenager, are you? Most of the investors are probably going to be about 45, 50, 60. So the rest of your life, you're saying, hey, we can get these people there. If you invest in the development there. And this is the thing. Out of all those IMF loans, out of all the quote aid, which is really just the disruption of Africa, this is why the battery that's been placed in the back by the citizens saying, hey, France, get the heck out of here, by a combination of China putting in loans, some of them forgiving, but putting in loans. Hey, they want resources. They're coming in, bringing in infrastructure projects. Look at Nigeria with the railway. Not just giving the money there and then it goes dispersed somewhere. Because look, hey, they're putting the infrastructure bills. They're doing bridges. They're doing all of this. This is all goodwill with China's Belt and Road Initiative, which makes it easier. Obviously, it's a self-satisfying thing and it's a win-win scenario. Hey, they just gotta, if you want a better deal, you negotiate for a better deal. But it's a win-win scenario. The local people, because we're just regular people at the end of the day. Everybody got their geopolitics. Let the politicians take care of that, right? Regular people on the ground, they're getting railways, airports, bridges that are connecting the people. You know what that does to the local populations? It raises the GDP. It raises the ease of doing business. It now makes those farmers in these very agriculture dependent countries, mining dependent countries, manufacturing dependent countries, now stronger to the influence of Europe. There are many people, what is that, in Sudan, either North or South Sudan, where now you have the onions, potatoes, or whatever, the surpluses are coming out of Europe and they're dumping them there and they destroyed the local farms. They don't have any way to protect themselves because of these so-called free trade agreements with Europe, North America, and everything. And one of the greatest exporters of agriculture to many of these nations is the United States. United States, Ukraine, Russia. Isn't that kind of ironic? What's going on right now with that situation in Eastern Europe and part of, I guess, Asia, depending on what you're looking at on the map. So you see the conflict going on. And of course, they're telling you, hey, take this side. And Africa either abstained or said no. It's not like the days of old where you tell us what to do. You just say, hey, do this. This is no longer a pimp and hoe relationship where you say, do this or else. No. This is a new age. You come to Africa, you come to black people, wherever that is, and you come with something real, or you can get out of our face. We don't have to take your money. We don't have to take this abuse. And at some point, the abuse is going to stop. They saw the writing on the wall when they invaded Syria. With the WikiLeaks, it said, hey, we're going to lose influence in Africa eventually, but let's make it not now. That's what the French president was saying back and forth with Hillary Clinton. Now, let's look at another thing. This is the population projection for Africa. Look at 2020 is 1.3, 2025, 1.5. That makes sense. It's almost around the corner. If it's 1.4 something now, then it's almost 1.7 in 2030. But look at 2050. Okay, look at 2050. 2.5. Let's round it up. 2.489, but 2.5 billion. So you're adding over 1.1, really if we round the numbers, 1.2 billion to the population within the next 27 years. And you got people coming there trying to tell you to lower the population through many means. We're not going to get into that in this video. We're talking about the Africa rule. And you got a median age of 20. Now, they're projecting that the median age at that time is going to be 24.8, which means the population is still going to be very, very young and mobile and upwardly there. So all the people around 20 now, what is that? because it's looking at 2020 as the median age projection. So that's when it was. So I guess it's taken every 5 years. So at that point, they're going to be 30 years older. They're going to be in their 50s. They're going to be in their 50s. All right. So these people in their 50s, that means they got an economy underneath them. Because remember, most of the investors, from what I've looked at around, and people that have the money to invest are going to be around 45 and up. So that means they're going to be ready to invest in the future to make the next generation even stronger. And these people see that. That's why they're trying to do deals, and now they're coming. And the time for talking and babbling is over. So the Africa rule is this. You won't believe what happened. You won't believe that the Africans and Caribbeans and the black people in the U.S. are standing up for themselves. Now, would you? You're used to saying, oh, woe is me, and seeing somebody, of course, the mainstream media run by these white nations, or will put a person that acts a fool on the television, but the regular citizens on the ground, get the heck out of my face. You're not talking real money. You're not talking real infrastructure. You're not talking real jobs for us. Forget this, quote, education talk, because that's a scam. That's what people are discovering now. Unless you're saying, hey, you're training us in manufacturing. Hey, is that what this is? Because remember, education is a big fat bubble, and that's what we're going to talk about there. Oh, really quick, let's do a shout out here. Happy International Women's Day. I took an image. Shout out to the one, I think it was Black Women's Day or something like that, that the original image was. Let me look here and actually look at that. Shout out to International Women's Day. Yeah, so this image originally said Black Women's History Month, and then we just took this out to put it to International Women's Day. I like the image. Shout out to them. Fair use, I guess. Fair use. But anyway, let's go ahead back to here, to Africa. You're going to have to come up with some better things. You know, they had that Africa-U.S. conference and everything back in December 2022. Like, what's coming out of that? Nothing. More talking. Oh, we're going to give solar panels. All right. So when are the solar panels getting built? What other money are you giving there? Are you doing anything real? Because in the U.S., you're just stoking up, hey, you know, you're abusing your citizens. You can't do anything effectively except for abuse the black population there. Anything else is like, I don't know what to do. Emergency situations happening, don't know what to do. U.S. is losing its dominance to China. And then in between that, because it's losing its influence in so many areas of the world, including in Europe, this leaves a window open for Africa to have some of the heat off of it. Because if USA is stretched thin, because that's what happens when an empire is falling, they're trying to send their forces everywhere else. They just got to take something where they can, right? If they're stretched thin and not even including a direct confrontation with China, then this allows Africa and the Caribbean to start really affirming itself. And you see this in these politicians now speaking up, and they're not being murdered, assassinated, deleted, if you will. They're not being taken out like that. Now, yes, Haiti just had a U.S. intervention. Now, how often can they get these other places to do that? How often are they now going to find willing participants in some of these nations? Right? When places are still in chaos, maybe they can get them. But many of these nations know. And let's point this out. Africa's development, now it's so ironic that the World Bank and International Monetary Fund wanted to try to lecture once again Africa about, you know, their growth rates and saying, hey, you got a 5% GDP growth rate, but that means it's only a 2.1 or something like that. And then they were like, hey, be careful of these China loans, be careful. And it's like, wait a minute. You guys, after the independence of all these nations, you had 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 decades, right, to do something that would have been beneficial to Africa. But now what just happened is China came in and did what you guys couldn't do in literally 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? They've done what you guys couldn't do in multiple decades, people's lifetimes, really, and they did it in less, in some instances, less than a decade, just 2, 3 years, and on a fraction of the money that you supposedly put into aid and all of that, because you guys try to keep Africa poor so that you guys can benefit. Because that's the thing with the Africa rule, they don't know how to approach Africa necessarily. Because it's like, we need Africa to be cheap in order for us. We need to make sure they don't manufacture their own goods. But that's what the Africa rule is about to change. Africa, after it builds up other things, and of course China's going to have its own stake in minerals and things like that. Hey, people can feel however way it is, and we see how relationships go in the future. But what I can look at here, if utilized properly, if the youth have their plans together, which I see many places still do need plans, but many are coming up with plans. Say, hey, you know what? We need to start investing in us learning manufacturing. So yeah, while they got the cobalt here in DRC, while they got some of these things here, and they have a majority stake, hey, our energy, we're going to talk about that. Nuclear, we're going to talk about that. Distribution and the infrastructure here, we're going to talk about these things because we need to get our agriculture together and stop being dependent upon majority non-African nations when we got each other right next to each other. We got temperate climates. We got the equator right there that gives it all year round where we can start harvesting. We got rainy seasons and everything. We can start doing these things and we could trade amongst each other and the rest of the world. That's where the Africa rule comes into play, where these people cannot bully the Africans anymore, cannot bully the black people anymore. And they are very nervous about that. I will tell you about that. They are very nervous about this population. They are trying to see, okay, how do I keep them, since we can't really bully them anymore and then play behind a puppet where we install. We're going to still try that because that's what they're going to do. We're going to still try to install that puppet master that's there, so they can be angry at their own people, can run away from their nations, while we kind of like don't like that, but at the same time we kind of need some of these things to go on so that they can be distracted longer and longer so we can solidify this, because they are building up too fast, guys. Oh yeah, another thing which you didn't know that happened. Did you know that the arable land, that means land that you can grow crops on, will be running out in Europe and the US by about 2050 or so? Did you know that? And that the most arable land on the planet, I think it's, what is it? 1/3 is in Africa. Did you know that? That 1/3 of the arable land of crops. That means no matter what, they're going to have to be coming to Africa for the crops anyway. And this all matches up with this population growing from 1.4 billion to 2.5 billion in 2050. All of these things are converging. So anybody listening to me right now, this is when you start doing that non-financial advice. You look at those cryptocurrencies. You look at what new fashion that you're going to do. Yeah, sure. They got that algorithmic fashion company out of China that's really taking everybody's ideas. I always thought that Google could do that because they're the search engine, and you would think they got access to that. Same thing with these social networks. But hey, if they didn't do it yet or whatever, or maybe they stole some different ones, I'm just surprised that they didn't do that. But in any case, now that pimp hole relationship where they say, hey, do this. Even the USA did that to Mexico. For the people that don't know, they offered Mexico to buy up Texas. And Texas said, nah, we don't want your money. Then they were just like, all right, we taking it. They annexed Texas. That's just how the U.S. operates. That's how Europe operates. The Europeans have been doing that. You see them in South Africa talking to the people as if they're nothing. You saw it on that one, that Survivor show in Australia, the South African woman saying, "Hey, I'm more African. I'm really African, more African than you, you African American woman." Like, huh? First of all, black. We don't like that term because it makes it seem like we immigrated here. No, we were here, right? You don't call yourselves European Americans. You say white people. So get it right. But anyway, now here's the thing. You got the arrogance for a person to say that, but that's coming from the top. That's coming from how the cultures have been set up for the last few hundred years. And the Africans, we've been on our back foot. The black people, we've been on our back foot. Now, that's changing because of this Africa rule. So if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe below. Definitely more content coming out, potentially daily. Not yet sure about that, but we're going to be talking about, here's a preview of some topics that we'll talk about. We'll talk about money making opportunities that are on the continent, in specific countries. Some of them will be in Kenya, some of them will be in Nigeria, some will be in South Africa, using the internet, digital highway. Now, I think, what is it, 5% or maybe 20% all transactions? I think it's 5. I don't feel like looking it up right now, but not the majority of transactions just yet have been developed online. But the way that the internet infrastructure is being built up, especially with 5G, and that's led primarily by China. We just got to admit all of these things here with Huawei. I want to introduce you to a new term. Many of you all may not be thinking about getting your skills up because you're like, hey, let me go get a degree in psychology. Why don't you go and learn the manufacturing process so that you can manufacture, I don't know, clothes, textiles, learn how to do manufacturing and oil so that during this boom that's happening here, Nigeria, instead of being an importer of its own oil, it will now manufacture it. And that's what these powers don't want. They don't want these to be manufactured because, hey, now the prices increase. We don't make this exorbitant amount of profit. Hey, no hard feelings to you, right? They say Africans, no hard feelings to you, but we kind of got to keep you broke. And it's convenient that you have that skin color because now we can say the us versus them narrative, and then we could just make up narratives on you. But here's the thing. Another topic we're going to talk about, the brand recognition, the brand of the African worldwide. You have to keep that in a positive light. You have to keep it in a positive light. That's what these European nations try to do. They say brand white, hey, positive, superior, we got the money, we're this. That's what the brand is. And you know what? That then commands the respect before you walk into a room. So those are two topics that we will be talking about. Here's another one that I said I wanted to introduce a new term to you. Let's go back to the first one. Let's talk about the digital logistics network, the digital logistics highway. That means you deal with your customs digitally instead of physically. You got a digital landscape. Now, people talk about the metaverse and all of that. This is kind of like beyond that metaverse stuff, but this is just internet, right? So you got pockets of, I'll give you a quick example. This is the bonus section of this video. Let's say that you're sending information from one person to another one. Let's just say it's an email, right? Let's go to the most basic thing. And maybe email will be phased out in the next few years. But let's say you're sending an email from one person to another person. Now you're shipping, remember, customs, shipment, tracking, and security. Those are 4 different things that you need in a logistics network, at least. So a physical version of that is you're delivering a mail. That's why it's called email. Like internet. I don't know what, electronic. That's what it is, electronic mail. So you got electronic mail, email, and you got physical. If you deliver a physical mail, so somebody delivers it to your home, then you need someone to have the roads paved. Okay, that's the distribution network. But you need the shipment method. Is it in an envelope? Is it in a truck? Is it in a regular car? Is it in a semi truck? How is that being done? Okay, great. Now you need to monitor that, aka tracking. Then it has to go through customs, especially if it's through outside of your country. But yeah, if it's outside of your country, you're going from, let's say, Ghana to Nigeria, sending somebody mail, going through customs, they got to check it. And you need your security because in many areas, especially since they're trying to prevent the development of Africa, many places are trying to prevent it, and that goes through the form of aid, where they just dump free clothes and shoes and food to destroy the local farmers. That has worked and it's put many out of business. Then they got to lower their prices and compete against the other ones that do charge, and so on and so forth. It's just very, very heinous things that have been done, not even including the weapons that were delivered and all of those things. We're going to talk about the other topics here. So you got the security, and you want to make sure it's all safe because, even in regular situations that were not fomented, maybe somebody wants to steal your mail. Maybe somebody wants to hijack the mail car because they're hungry or something. Okay, great. You want to make sure you have that on a digital logistics network. We're going to go into more detail in that in the future. But I want y'all to have some homework right here. Just look up a digital logistics network. Okay? So I just wanted to talk about two different things here. Digital logistics network, and we got some things to talk about as far as where instead of you getting a degree in psychology or sociology or something, like, is that really going to help you? Yes, we need our psychologists and therapists and things like that, but let's talk about things that will build up the infrastructure, build up the countries. What is the strength of the country is what you got to ask yourself. Is my country heavy on agriculture? Is it heavy on oil and gas? Okay, oil and gas is dangerous because people kind of get disappeared, and that's a new term, I guess. They get deleted, they get, offed if they do something there too quickly or whatever, like what happened with people that were protesting Shell out of Nigeria. They kind of just was gone. Who knows? I might be gone just talking about these topics here on the YouTube channel, and that just kind of proves more of the dictatorship that would be out of the U.S. or something. But yeah, you got manufacturing that can be done, mining. What is your country strong in? And then maybe you can go into that and find like-minded people. Maybe you don't like the topic too much, but hey, it's something to be done. I'll catch you all on the next video. This has been The Only Uzo. Because remember, the only direction is up.